But do you think that having good intentions always guarantee good cinema? No, right?
Just like to also draw a little parallel with Nayat 2. Nayat 2 was an exceptional film.
I am so sure if this was made by a Malayalam director, the film would have been shorter and crisper, and probably there was not a lot of spoon feeding, and there the things would have been said in much subtle way. And I don't think we should even take the names of Fahad Fasil and Suriya in the same breath. Welcome to All Things Cinema Vodcast. The channel has now a new look to it, new name. Earlier it was based on my name, but then I thought, since this has actually become a platform dedicated to cinema, and it's no more just me as the sole participant. It's pretty much Farad is there, then Sneha is there, Sadiq is there, and a lot of other guests who keep coming. So let me name it a little bit more generic based on cinema. So that's how this name came along. Also, if you see in this video or every video of ours, there's this all things cinema text as well, which is always there. So it's a new beginning post Diwali, and Farah, thank you for coming back after 2 weeks. And today we are going to talk about a film which has been making quite some noise because of not just the film it is, but also it's based on a real life incident, on a real life character. So let's get started. The film in discussion today is Jai Bhim, and Jai Bhim stars Suriya, who's making a comeback, and I think it's a pretty powerful drama. So Farad, first thoughts on Jai Bhim?
So I have actually been a fan of Surya. So by the way, the detailed review of Jai Bhim can also be found on my website, Popcorn Reviews. The link will be in the description. I've been a fan of Surya, and his last release, Surarai Potro. Okay, so that again was quite impressive, and I remember that was probably the second or the third review on my website when I launched it last year. So my website completes 1 year in November this month. So that was probably the second or the third review that I'd put out, new review that is there, I'd put out last year. And this year again it was Jai Bhim. To be very honest, I had a very low expectation from the film, considering that his other two production releases that were there, which were again direct to OTT on Amazon Prime, they weren't too good, to be honest. One had Jyotika in it, which was a complete washout for me. It just didn't work. But when Jai Bhim it started off on a very good note, and it really was captivating, and it caught my attention immediately. And I was just praying that it doesn't falter anywhere. And luckily, I mean, it was such a hard-hitting drama, and it unfolded like a thriller, which really kept you hooked. There were like the screenplay was a little oscillating between forward and backward in the second half, especially. So the mystery element was kept right till the end, as to what exactly happened to that person. So I mean, I really, really enjoyed the movie. It tackled a delicate social issue as well, but I mean, it was so well done. I mean, it reminded me in parts of Article 15 a bit, Ayushmann star, and also Vetri Maran directed film Visanarai, which is by the name of Interrogation on Netflix. So this again reminded me of that in a limited capacity. So it was terrific for me.
Well, guys, you can hear the explosions in the background. It's Diwali time, and it's a day after Diwali, and still, people here are going bang bang. Probably to celebrate India's victory today, as India went bang bang against Scotland. But coming back to the movie, I think for me it was a good film, but I won't go on to exaggerate and say that it's a brilliant film or it's very extraordinary. I felt the film was first of all a little too long for my liking. Like I couldn't sit through it in one go. I had to break it down in two halves because of course, because of my own time limitation. But also, I felt that it could have been edited down a lot. One song's too many for me as well, and the background score. I mean, being a musician, I always have one part of my mind looking at the music. Watching the film from that perspective. So that way, I thought the music was doing a lot of spoon feeding, very loud kind of background score. So do you think these, you know, let's be honest and say it's not the subtlest of the films. It's not subtle at all. There is a bit of over dramatic stuff, or a lot of melodrama. So do you think since the film is set in 90s, so they have gone with that sort of a template to maybe spoon feed the audience a little too much than required?
I don't know whether spoon feed would be the right word, but yeah, I tend to agree with you that it was not subtle in any way. I mean, this was a commercial pot boiler, out and out commercial pot boiler, and in that they had introduced a social element as well. So yeah, I tend to agree. Maybe I mean you are in a better position to actually comment on the background music, but I really didn't seem to mind it. I mean, yeah, probably the template, because it was set in the 90s, it would have probably been a little more in your face, so to say. But having said that, it still worked for me. I mean, some of the sequences were very well executed. I think the court sequences that were there, they were terrific. And I just also would like to appreciate the writing by saying that they did not wander off from the path. There was no unwanted humor that was there that we sometimes see in a courtroom scene, which just
I
dilutes the impact of the scene.
I felt there was a couple of unwanted things, like for example, that old age lawyer who is sitting besides Chandru, who's always saying Om Namah Shivaya, and I thought he was not required. He was just kind of praising Chandru's moves and all, and that was a bit of a comic relief. And even the public prosecutor, the one who's junior, who takes the sentences at first, and then he steps down and somebody else takes over him. Even his character was more of a caricature. He was always coming late to the courtroom and then saying sorry. And I really felt there were elements in the film that could have been cut down, and instead of 2 hour 40 minutes, this could have been a 2 hour 15-minute film easily. A couple of songs could have been cut down. So that was my issue. As you said, maybe because it's set in 90s, that's why the treatment is such. But the audience is not based in 90s now. I mean, just look at the neighboring state itself. Kerala is not too far from there. How many Malayalam films we see which are over 2 hour 40 minute or 3 hours long? Not many. You know,
Malik was one that I remember,
Malik,
but
but
not otherwise.
Malik
Yeah.
probably had that sort of a narrative which probably also demanded that sort of a length. But here, a courtroom drama set in 90s, I am so sure if this was made by a Malayalam director, the film would have been shorter and crisper, and probably
Maybe.
there was not a lot of spoon feeding, and the things would have been said in much subtle way. And I
Maybe.
mean, I felt there was a lot of in the face kind of stuff, like children crying and a lot of melodrama, and which is something I'm not used to when it comes to South Indian cinema, especially after having consumed so much of Malayalam cinema. So, would you agree to me that the treatment of the film probably was not as powerful as the story itself because it's a real life incident?
No, I don't know. I tend to disagree. I mean, the treatment, it didn't, to be honest, it didn't bother me. Just if I can speak about the previous Surya release, Surarai Potru, that was there, that for me was close to what you were saying. That had a very good story, but it again had those commercial elements as well, and it had the song Too Many. I Although I'd like that movie as well, but that movie for me could have been much more brilliant, because technically it was still pretty good. Uh, But I so to think that Surya being the producer himself of this movie, he probably would have uh, you know uh, reflected on those mistakes probably and overcome them here, which he did. I feel. I mean, it really honestly didn't bother me. Neither did the length. By the way, the Hindi dubbed version on Amazon Prime is 150 minutes, so it's 15 minutes shorter than the Tamil version. So that is just one trivia that I wanted to give. I don't know what is different. I have not watched the Hindi version. I watched the original Tamil one. But I mean, yeah, if it at the start of it, if you ask me, do you want a shorter film? Definitely, I would want a shorter film. I mean, you wouldn't want to watch a 3 hour movie after work, especially when I have a day job, and to finish off a 3 hour film after work is a bit tiresome as well. That is true. But once I started, I mean, I didn't seem to get bored or flustered anywhere. I mean, to be very honest.
I'm
So
not
it,
saying it was boring or it was not saying anything negative in terms of the film as a whole, the message that came out, or uh, uh, the storyline or anything. It was entertaining, as you said, until the end. They kept the very suspense alive, and you kept playing the guessing game. But then also at the same time, I think there's no doubt about the performances. I think each and everyone was very well casted, and everybody played the role to perfection. But as I pointed out, there were a couple of characters that could have been done away with, and so now talking about now getting into the film a little bit. I think the opening scene itself was very important, where it literally laid the foundation and laid the ground rules that this is what's been happening. And I think this was 90s setup, but these things are still pretty much prevalent in 2021 as well. The untouchability and the treatment of the tribal communities. So somewhere I think the opening scene was very important in the context of the film, when that officer is asking which community you belong to, and based on that they will either be freed and or they will be put aside and forced with some fake charges. So after that, now moving on, as Chandru comes to the party, I think he was in after the first half an hour. So
yeah.
before that, I think the way they have shown this whole tribal world, very well shot. I think that the world they wanted to create, the characters they wanted to introduce, everything felt perfect in terms of the costume beat, production, or even the way these people were cast, not just the skin tone, but also the way they were dressed, the way they were speaking. Uh, so there is a lot of authenticity in the way they created this whole world of Erulas.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you're spot on when you say that the production design and the costume. I mean, that was actually the foundation. If you would have faltered in that first half hour, the full movie would not have made sense. It would have probably crashed, which was the mistake that they had made in the Jyotika starrer. Udan Pirappe is the name, I think. Sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. That was the earlier Suriya production, Suriya and Jyotika production that was released last month only on Amazon Prime. I think that's where they had faltered. The first 30 minutes just didn't, you know, sink me into the drama. But unlike that, this, I think I was in right from the very first scene, as you said, when the so-called prisoners of the tribes, they were, based on the caste, they were either freed or they were again, accused or falsely accused of some charge. So that first scene itself, commanded my attention and just set the ball rolling for what was going to come. Although, and I would just like to also draw a little parallel with Nayat 2. Nayat 2 was an exceptional film, and that again had a social angle to it as well, though it was not about untouchability or anything of that sort, but it did have So why I'm comparing it with Night 2 is because they touched upon those social elements as well. So if I compare to Night 2, definitely it was not as effective. It was probably too much in your face, you know. But if I have to look at Jai Bhim from say an independent lens, then it did work for me. I would think, you know, uh,
Yeah, I mean,
even good commercial elements that
throughout
was there.
throughout the film, there was a lot of activity. I mean, something or the other
Yeah,
kept happening. It's not like the screenplay was dull. The screenplay was very gripping, and you
yeah.
didn't feel bored at any point of time. But the way Chandru was portrayed in a few scenes, the film at times started to look like it's about Chandru rather than this whole important issue. Because if you see the way he's narrating the dialogue, narrating his point of view in the courts to the judges, there are a few scenes where you felt there's some sort of a heroism coming out, but I just felt that the treatment should have been that this whole issue should have been the center point, not Chandru. That's what I felt in a couple of scenes.
And I tend to agree here. Yeah, I tend to agree with what you're saying here because the issue. Yeah, but then at the end of the day, I mean, this was a commercial movie, so
Was it originally
probably
meant for theaters, or was it always going to be on Amazon?
no. No, it was originally made for theaters, but because of the uncertainty with the theaters, it all three films, all three Surya and Jyotika productions that were there, they had released in on Amazon Prime. But it was originally a
Do you
theater.
think, since the original plan would have been for theaters, do you think maybe that's also another reason why the film is a little too loud and not too subtle?
100%. 100%. Yes, yes, definitely. And somehow, I mean, since we're saying it's loud or melodramatic, I mean, it's all of that. But again, I mean, this particular movie, it somehow it has worked for me. It I
So
mean, you can always argue that we've seen many Malayalam films, we've consumed many Malayalam films, and if we compare with that,
even Tamil also, Farad. I mean, we have seen Sarapata Parambarai, which was equally long. Like it'll be first of all unfair to compare it with Malayalam cinema, because everybody has a different point of view. The politics of the states also differ. The pop culture references differ. So that way, I think it'll be unfair to compare it. But the point here being, uh, it is an entertaining film, but and I'm sure, just like you, most of our viewers would have enjoyed it as well. But here, I think whatever the flaws are in the film, they are not sort of uh, outdoing the genuinity of the film, the intentions of the filmmakers. Also, because it's based on a real life incident. But do you think that having good intentions always guarantee good cinema? No, right?
no, not necessary, not necessary. But here, it for me it worked at the end of the day. But not necessary. I mean, I get what you're saying, and yeah, there have been good intentioned films which haven't worked as well. It happens. You lose the plot at times. For example, the Pink remake, the Telugu remake that was there, that was focused on the protagonist instead of the girls. That was one again. Again, because it's a social issue. That's why I'm bringing that up again. Not a untouchability issue, but a social issue. It was in the city. That was again well intentioned, but it was ruined because the focus was on your protagonist, which was not in Pink, by the way. Pink was the story of those three girls. Unlike that, I feel here, yeah, at times you can argue that Chandru was given a lot of limelight as compared to the issue that they were tackling. Yeah, it may have been, but I think the director probably has maintained a very fine balance here.
But also
Uh,
in a couple of scenes, I remember the judges would be already inside, and then this guy sitting outside, and then he comes inside. Did you notice that? In real life, that's not
those are
possible.
flaws. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
not.
those are flaws.
Everybody has to
100%
be
flaws.
present before the judges arrive. Then they have to stand up when the judges come on. So I don't know. I mean, just on the name of creative liberty, you can't overdo things as well. Just because it's set up in the 90s,
100%.
just because it was meant to be for theaters, these reasons are not good enough that it will justify just anything. So that's what my point is. Even though it's a good intention film, I'm sure even the real life Chandru would have been involved in it too. He would have definitely been consulted for this, and I'm very sure without his uh, permission or without his complete satisfaction, they wouldn't have gone ahead with the release as well. But still, I felt that this film could have been way better. This film could have become a masterpiece if this was handled a bit differently. Yeah.
I wanted to know your opinion on one thing as well. How would you rate the performance of Surya? And the second part of the question is that as compared to say a Fahad Fazil or any of the top actors, where would you rate Surya as a performer?
I don't think we should even take the names of Fahad Fasil and Surya in the same breath, because I mean, I've not seen a lot of Surya's work, but whatever I've seen, at times I feel it falls flat. In terms of expressions and all, he's limited. If you really want to compare it with Fahad or any, even Vijay Sethupathi or the likes in Tamil cinema, I would much rather compare Surya with Vijay probably, because these are two huge stars we are talking about in Tamil cinema. But when it comes to pure acting skills, I think both of them are a little bit limited in what they do, and they do what they know really well in remaining in their limitations. So they know what they are capable of. They stick to their strength. I mean, there's nothing wrong in that as well. Just like here we have Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan. So these guys stick to their strength because they know their limitations as well, and that's what probably has also been a reason behind their longevity so far. So same way, I think Surya, comparing him with an actor like Fahad will be not a fair comparison. Just like we were comparing this film with Nat, I think that's also an unfair comparison. But yeah, I mean, in this role, in this character, he felt like he belonged there. He did justice to it. But in terms of overall, looking at Surya as an actor, I think he's a he's not as great as some of the other people. It's kind of like somebody asking me how would you rate Shah Rukh Khan compared to somebody like an Irfan Khan. So you know you you understand now the analogy, right?
Right, right. I agree also. Yeah, Fahad Fazil is way ahead of everybody. I think it will be totally unfair to even compare.
But
That's totally
talking about performances now, I think that lady, what's her name? I'm forgetting the name.
Rajisha or Lijo.
Lijo. I think she was bang on. She probably for me stole the limelight more than Surya in this film. She was,
Yeah,
every scene she left a mark. She was, her presence was felt, and great casting. I think not just her but also her husband. Raja Khanna, he was brilliant, and those torture scenes literally, disgusted me to the core. It really shook my soul, and it's like when we are sitting in our AC rooms and watching these films, it's very easy
yeah,
to actually think, do these things even happen in real life? I mean, people can easily think that, but they do. That's the reality, and this is based on a real incident. So we can only sit and we can't even begin to imagine, what those people would have gone through. So yeah, I mean, if we were shook like that, that means the actor did a brilliant job. The director,
Totally.
everyone involved in that, to bring that emotion out, to move the audience. I think that's their win, isn't it?
Totally. And in addition to that, even I would also like to name Prakash Raj. I think he was fabulous in the film as well, and very, very restrained performance.
And these kind of roles are a cakewalk for him. I mean, it's
I
not.
would think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. But I mean, he's, however, very earnest. I really liked watching him when he was on screen, along with, of course, Lijo and even Rajisha. Rajisha also had a very small role, and but still, she did, I think, full justice to it.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
Prakash
these
Raj
are the
was
Malayalam crop that are there in the Tamil film, probably.
Prakash Raj was kind of like a relief, in all the tension. His presence would
Yeah.
bring a sense of
There's a
calmness.
calming influence.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and he was that face of, the flag bearer of good cops. He's just balancing out things over there. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, all in all, it's an important film. Not to discredit anything, just because the film is not too great, but nonetheless, it's still an important film. Uh, doesn't matter how it comes across to you as a viewer, because everyone will perceive it differently. But I think the story should be told, should have been told, and it's good that it's told, because if this film wouldn't have come out, I don't think, I mean, including us, we were not really aware of this incident, or even
yeah,
came through the real life life. So, so yeah, Jai Bhim, it's available on Amazon Prime, guys. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. You will not be disappointed. There are flaws in the film, but as I said, they will not overweigh the overall uh, genuinity in the film, I guess. And yeah, so Surya, I think this will be another tick on his profile, on his discography. It's going to, strike the right chords with the public in general, I think, isn't it?
100%. 100%. I mean, this is another green tick in my report card of Surya also.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So thank you guys for watching. If you are new to the channel, so this is All Things Cinema Vodcast, not podcast, because it's video plus podcast. So subscribe to the channel, and if you are an old subscriber, thank you for all the support so far, and please keep liking and sharing, and put in the comments what you thought about Jai Bhim. So we'll be soon back with yet another video. So until next time, good night. Thank you.